Everyone in the hospital stopped breathing when the biker gang leader walked in, because in his arms, he wasn't carrying a weapon. He was carrying a baby covered in blood. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, but the silence that followed was sharp. Nurses froze mid-step, doctors stopped talking, even the security guard at the counter reached for his radio, but couldn't move. The man who walked in looked like he belonged in a prison, not a hospital. Tall, leather jacket drenched in rain, tattoos creeping up his neck, and eyes dark enough to silence a room. The name stitched on his vest read Rogue. He walked straight to the front desk, breathing hard. "She needs help," he said, his voice shaking for the first time in years. The nurse blinked, staring at the bundle in his arms, a little baby, wrapped in a torn denim jacket, her tiny chest barely rising. "What happened?" the nurse stammered. Rogue's voice cracked. "Found her on Highway 12. Car flipped. Her mom didn't make it." Doctors rushed forward, taking the baby from his arms. Blood smeared across Rogue's jacket, but he didn't care. He stood there, watching them will the child away. His fists clenched, his jaw tight. The same man who once led bar fights and street wars now looked like a broken father who'd lost everything. The hospital staff whispered behind him. "Isn't that the guy from the Iron Sons? The outlaw? Why would he bring a baby here?" Rogue heard every word, but he stayed quiet. Then the nurse came back, trembling. "Sir, we need a name for the child's chart." He looked down, his voice low. "Her name's Hope." That's what her mom whispered before she went. The nurse froze. "You knew them?" Rogue looked away, eyes glistening for just a second. "No, but her mother saved my brother's life 2 years ago. A nurse. She didn't know who he was, she just helped. Tonight, I found her car." He swallowed hard. She was still breathing long enough to say one thing. "Take care of my baby." And that's what he was here to do. A biker who'd lived a life of chaos was now standing in the middle of a hospital, trying to protect the last thing left of an angel who once saved his brother. But as the doctors disappeared down the hall, Rogue noticed 2 men enter from the far door, suits, cold eyes, whispering to the guard. One of them pointed toward him. Something wasn't right. And Rogue's instincts, the ones that had saved him in fights and wars, told him this night was far from over. Rogue's eyes followed the 2 men as they whispered to the guard. They didn't look like cops. Their suits were too sharp, their shoes too clean, their expressions too cold. One of them flashed a badge, but not the kind hospitals usually saw. The taller one said, "Where's the child the biker brought in?" The nurse hesitated. "She's in surgery." "The baby?" Not asking for details, the man cut her off. "Just tell us which room." Rogue stepped closer, his boots heavy on the tile floor. "You got business with that baby?" His voice was calm but dangerous, the kind that made everyone in the hallway hold their breath. The man turned toward him. "You must be Rogue. Iron Son's leader, right?" Rogue didn't answer, just stared. The man smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. "You should walk away, Mr. Rogue. That child isn't your problem." "She became my problem the second her mother died in my arms," Rogue said, his tone dark. "Who are you?" The man's smile vanished. "Government. You don't need to know more." Rogue took a slow step forward. "See, here's the thing. People who say you don't need to know, they're usually the kind that make innocent people disappear." The shorter agent pulled his jacket aside, revealing a holster. "Careful, tough guy." The nurse gasped, but Rogue didn't even blink. His eyes turned cold, that old fire flickering back. "You point that at me," he said, "and you'll be eating it before you hit the floor." At that exact second, a door burst open down the hall. A doctor ran out, breathless. "We've got a pulse. The baby's alive." Everyone froze. The agents looked at each other. One muttered, "We can't let her survive." Rogue heard it. That one whisper, and everything inside him snapped. He grabbed the agent's wrist, so fast the man's gun hit the floor. The other tried to draw, but Rogue shoved him against the wall, eyes burning. "Why don't you tell everyone here what you just said?" The hallway erupted. Nurses backed away. The doctor shouted for security. But Rogue wasn't letting go until he got an answer. The taller agent gritted his teeth. "Her mother was part of a witness program. That baby's not supposed to exist. Orders are orders." Rogue's grip tightened. "She exists now, and if you or anyone else comes near her, you'll wish you didn't." Security ran toward them, but before anyone could reach, the 2 agents slipped away down the corridor, vanishing through the emergency exit. The nurse turned to Rogue, trembling. What was that?" Rogue looked toward the surgery room where the tiny girl was fighting for life. "Trouble," he said softly. "And it's heading our way." He reached into his vest, pulled out his phone, and made one call. "Brothers, suit up," he said. "We're guarding a baby tonight." Within 30 minutes, the sound of roaring engines filled the hospital parking lot. Black bikes lined up one after another, chrome glinting under the flickering lights. Patients peeked out their windows as a dozen leather-clad men stepped off their bikes, forming a wall around the entrance. Inside, Rogue stood at the window, watching them take positions like soldiers. The nurse from earlier, Maria, walked up slowly. "You can't do this," she whispered. "This is a hospital, not a war zone." Rogue's voice stayed calm. "War finds you no matter where you hide." Maria looked toward the hallway where the baby was resting after surgery. She made it. Her heartbeats weak, but steady. Rogue turned, and for a second, the hardness in his face cracked. "You saved her." Maria shook her head. "No, you did. You brought her here when no one else would have stopped." Before Rogue could answer, his phone buzzed. It was Tank, one of his oldest brothers. "We got eyes on 2 SUVs circling the block," Tank said. "Tinted windows, no plates." Rogue's jaw tightened. "Government. Or worse," Tank replied. "They're waiting for the night shift to clear out." Rogue looked through the glass doors. The corridors were quiet now. Most of the staff had already left, and the storm outside had darkened everything. The only light came from the flickering sign over the yard door. He turned to Maria. "Lock the nursery doors. No one gets in unless they work here." Maria hesitated. "Who are these people?" "The kind that bury their mistakes," Rogue said, sliding his jacket off. His arms were covered in scars, each one with a story he'd never told. He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded photo, a young woman holding the same baby from earlier. "Her name was Clara. She was your nurse, wasn't she?" Maria gasped. You knew her?" Rogue nodded slowly. "She saved my brother when he was bleeding out after a crash. Never asked for a name, just helped. That baby is all that's left of her." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "So that's why you came." Rogue looked toward the dark windows, the reflection of his brothers outside. "Ready, waiting." "No," he said quietly. "I came because someone has to stand between that baby and the kind of people who think life is disposable." Then, through the hum of hospital lights, came the sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Rogue's hand went to the chain hanging from his belt. The glass doors rattled, and before anyone could react, the power went out. The hospital went black. Rogue whispered, "They're here." Darkness swallowed the hospital whole. The hum of machines died, replaced by the sound of heavy rain outside and footsteps echoing through the halls. The emergency lights flickered weakly, casting red flashes across the walls. Rogue's instincts kicked in. "Tank, back entrance. No one gets past." Static crackled through the radio. "Copy that, boss." Maria clutched the counter, her voice trembling. "They'll kill us all if we stay." Rogue shook his head. "They'll kill her if we run." He turned toward the nursery door, eyes sharp. "Keep the lights off. They hunt with vision, not heart." The front doors creaked open. 2 men in black stepped in, guns raised, their flashlights sweeping the lobby. "Find the child," one ordered. "Take her and burn everything." Rogue moved like a ghost, crouching low, the dim red lights bouncing off his leather vest. The moment one of them turned, he grabbed the man's arm, twisted it backward, and sent him crashing into a vending machine. The second one aimed, bang. The bullet shattered glass, but Rogue was already behind him, slamming his shoulder into the man's chest, knocking him to the ground. In the chaos, Maria ran to the nursery and locked the door from inside. She could hear the baby crying softly, her tiny voice cutting through the fear. "Stay with me, Hope," she whispered, tears running down her cheeks. Outside, more footsteps thundered. 3, maybe 4 men entered from the rear hallway. Rogue ducked behind the reception desk, pulling out the chain from his belt, thick, steel, and deadly. When one of the men leaned around the corner, Rogue swung. The chain hit hard, sending him down. Tank burst through the side door, tackling another. "You all right?" Tank yelled. "Not till the baby's safe," Rogue growled. The fight lasted only minutes, but when the final man hit the floor, silence returned. The lights flickered back on, and the sound of sirens began to rise in the distance. Maria stepped out, holding the baby in her arms. "She's okay," she said, her voice shaking but firm. Rogue took off his jacket and wrapped it gently around the child. The sight of this rough, battle-worn biker cradling a baby made even the nurses in the doorway go still. "She's gonna have a future," he said quietly. "I'll make sure of it." Tank exhaled, looking around at the mess. "What now?" Rogue looked toward the sunlight breaking through the storm clouds outside. "Now we make her name mean something. Hope deserves a world better than ours." Maria placed a trembling hand on his arm. "Where will you take her?" Rogue smiled faintly, the first real one of the night. "Home. To the brothers. She'll grow up knowing what family really means. Not blood, but loyalty." And as the police arrived, the nurses whispered to each other, because no one there would ever forget the night the outlaw gang became guardians. If this story touched your heart, share it. Because kindness doesn't always wear a smile, and heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes, they walk in covered in dust, carrying stories that could change your heart forever.